In problem 1 from chapter 14, we will begin to explore the idea of level strategies and chase strategies for accommodating our resources to the work at hand. Let's read the problem together. Barberton Municipal Division of Road Maintenance is charged with road repair in the city of Barberton and the surrounding area. Cindy Kramer, Road Maintenance Director, must submit a staffing plan for the next year based on a set schedule for repairs and on the city budget. Kramer estimates that the labor hours required for the next 4 quarters are 6,000, 12,000, 19,000, and 9,000. Notice that I've put those in a little Excel array down here. Each of the 11 workers on the workforce can contribute 500 hours per quarter. Payroll costs are 6,000 in wages per worker for regular time worked up to 500 hours, with an overtime pay rate of $18 for each overtime hour. Overtime is limited to 20% of the regular time capacity in any quarter. Let's see what that'd be. 20% of 500 hours is 100 hours. So you can have a maximum of 100 hours of overtime per worker. Continuing. Although unused overtime capacity has no cost, unused regular time is paid at $12 per hour. It's as if the people are on salary, in other words. The cost of hiring a worker is $3,000 and the cost of laying off a worker is $2,000. Subcontracting is not permitted. Alright, given all that information, we are asked to, in part A, find a level workforce plan that relies just on overtime and the minimum amount of undertime possible. Overtime can be used to its limit in any quarter. What is the total cost of the plan, and how much undertime hours does it call for? Alright, so to do this, recall from your reading that a level strategy, which is what they're asking for here, a level workforce plan, has the same number of people come in every period and do the same amount of work. So we're going to have the same number of employees. This is generally good for planning purposes, because you don't have to do a lot of changing of employees and hiring and firing and paperwork and scheduling. It's a lot easier to count on a level workforce strategy. So we see here that the peak demand actually happens in quarter 3, 19,000 hours. So that's what we have to plan for, is this 19,000 hours. Now we know that each employee can work for 600 hours per quarter. Where'd we get 600? Well, in the problem we're told that they can work 500 hours of regular time and 20% of the regular time capacity in overtime. 20% of 500 is 100 hours, so 500 plus 100 is 600. So we could get 600 hours of work out of every employee that we have. Therefore, the level workforce that relies just on overtime, allows no delay, and minimize undertime is going to be, let's go over here and say, what is 19,000 divided by 600? I guess I got to put an equal sign in there, don't I? Equals. It's 31.67. Well, we would of course round that up, so we were going to say 32 workers. So we're going to have 32 workers every quarter on the payroll. So let's write that in right here. 32 workers. Now, given this demand, what would our costs be? We're going to have a cost associated with regular wages. And that cost is going to be equal to, let's see, what would be the cost of a worker? The cost I'm sorry, where's the cost of a worker? Payroll costs are $6,000 in wages per worker for regular time worked. So it's going to be 6,000 times the number of workers, which is 32, times the number of quarters, which is 4. So we get $768,000. So that will be our costs associated with regular wages. All right, how much will we pay in overtime? Oops, T-I-M-E. Well, how much overtime are we going to spend here? If we have 32 workers, and they are each working 500 hours, let's say, which is a regular time, equals 32 times 500. That means every quarter they can each produce 16,000 hours of labor. That means that in Q1 we have no overtime. In Q2 we have no overtime, and in Q4 we have no overtime. The only time we have overtime is in Q3 when the demand of 19,000 exceeds the regular time of 16,000. Therefore, the only overtime we will have is 3,000 hours in Q3. So overtime wages are going to be equal to 3,000 hours times $18 per hour. So we have a $54,000 expense in overtime wages. Now, recall, I'm going to delete this. Recall that we're starting with, how many workers do we have? We're starting with 11 workers. And we say we're going to have 32. Therefore, we need to hire some people. So there's going to be a hiring cost. And it looks like we're going to have to hire 32 minus 11 is 21. So our hiring expense is going to be 21 times, how much does it cost to hire somebody? The cost of hiring a worker is $3,000. 3,000. So $63,000 in hiring costs. Well, this would appear to be all of the costs associated with this particular approach, which is the level strategy. So I can come down here and go up and click auto sum, and it will automatically sum the three numbers above it. And it looks like the answer is $885,000. Now, the second part of this question says, what is the total cost of the plan and how much undertime does it call for? Well, undertime is going to happen in quarter 1, in quarter 2, and quarter 4. Recall that we have, let's see, undertime. What do we have? We have 32 workers times 500 hours. That's regular time. And then we're going to subtract off what the demand is. So it looks like we had the equivalent of 16,000 hours of regular time, but they only used 6,000, so our undertime was 10,000. I can probably copy that down. And of course this one doesn't mean anything, because that's where we had to have overtime. So it looks like the sum of the undertime is the sum of these four, which is 21,000 hours. So if you're the manager, you have to say, okay, we made a plan where for 21,000 hours people are going to be sitting around doing nothing. Yeah. And that's how you do part A.